Shabbat Shalom, my friends, and welcome to a week of historic national celebration as Joe Biden will be inaugurated as our country's 46th president. Of course, a few days ago, we were wondering whether Joe Biden would be inaugurated as our 47th president. That didn't happen. It's another story for another day. And of course, our celebration will be forever tarnished and scarred by what happened on January 6th. But I choose to be celebrating January 20th and inauguration because our country desperately needs to restore its political and spiritual and communal foundations. Jewish tradition, views new beginnings as a gift. May, a prayer, May, January 20th, 2021, be looked back upon as the beginning of healing for our people and our world. Our Sedra is Va'era, Exodus chapter 6, verse 2 and following. I wonder how many of you have ever read Joseph Campbell's masterwork, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Now, truth, I was 10 years old when Campbell's masterwork was published. And by the time I entered high school, it was already celebrated as a classic text studying the formation of our ancient world. In fact, it was translated into 20 different languages, including Hebrew, a classic. Campbell laid out the structure of what he described as a universal myth, his language, a monomyth. Here's it. A hero is called to a mission. The hero pushes back against this call and refuses the mission. But the mission is relentless. It won't let him not go. The mission requires him to do combat with a dangerous and treacherous force. The hero confronts deeply challenging ordeals until finally he extracts a boon from his struggles, a boon that will now have great benefit to the entire world. At that point, the hero returns home. Does Campbell's description of a hero's mission to achieve a boon sound familiar to you? Well, it should. It should. George Lucas acknowledged the impact of Campbell's book on what would become the Star Wars movies. Imagine, an arcane book on mythology became the source book for one of the greatest entertainment franchises of all time. Not bad, but of equal importance, to be honest, probably of much greater importance, is how Campbell himself applied his monomyth to the stories of Buddha, Moses, Jesus, and Mohammed. And Campbell's disciples later on brought Harry Potter into the midst of that circle. Same story, kind of infinite variations. Moses experienced the call, the refusal, the initiation, the journey, the combat, and the claiming of a boon for all of humankind. Now, Moses doesn't start off as being hero worthy. Far from it. He was raised as an Egyptian in Pharaoh's own house. He then killed an Egyptian who was brutalizing the Israelites. And then our hero-to-be fled for his life. And he would have remained living in his desert isolation had it not been for the presence of God calling to him from a bush that burned but somehow was not consumed. Then, step by step, Moses' life mirrors key aspects of Campbell's monomyth. The boon, of course, was the Torah. It is the Torah that Moses won for the Jewish people and gave to all of humankind. Campbell's work is deeply fascinating. It is also, can be, deeply troubling. If it is true that the framework of Buddha's life story, Moses' life story, Jesus' life story, Mohammed's life story, Harry Potter, if they are similar in powerfully important ways, then what privileges one iteration of the monomyth over the others. Why read the book of Leviticus, which is a tough slog under the best of circumstances, when one might read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows instead? Now, you must know, some contemporary Jewish scholars have pushed back hard against the implications of Campbell's work and the monomyth. There's no miraculous birth in the story of Moses. And Moses didn't move toward the manifestations of magical power. Moses, in fact, was raised in Pharaoh's home, which was the center of magic and magicians. And then he would go on to defeat the practitioners of magic. And Moses' mission, the traditional scholars would say, didn't begin with the burning bush. Rather, it was when Moses saw cruelty and injustice. Moses was moved to his mission out of compassion, not because of a voice calling from a bush. And even though Moses sometimes appeared with rays of light radiating from his head, he never was considered as being anything other than a flesh and blood human being. And let's ask, did Moses rise to a hero's stature after cataclysmic battles with the representatives of evil such as Satan or Voldemort? Or was it at Mount Sinai when Moses brought Torah to the Jewish people and to the world? Did Moses achieve the apex of his labors by defeating relentless enemies, or by deepening his own soul and his own humility? And finally, by the way, Moses never made it to the promised land. Moses never made it home. Moses left the conclusion of his journey for us. We are eternally entering the promised land, generation after generation, with the Torah in hand. 20 years ago, Rabbi David Wolpe, a leading conservative rabbi here in L.A., challenged the historicity of the Exodus during a sermon he delivered during Passover. Talk about living on the edge. Wolpe used an in-depth study of archaeological evidence to show that the Exodus simply couldn't have occurred in the manner in which it is described in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Talk show host Dennis Prager attacked Wolpe by saying that if the Exodus didn't occur as described in the Torah, then there is no Judaism. Interestingly, when the furor died down, and there was a furor, life resumed for Rabbi Wolpe. Ha'olam kamin ha'goholech. Life went on just as before. Wolpe, by the way, is still the senior rabbi of his very prestigious conservative congregation. Now, I don't know where you would stand when considering Joseph Campbell's templates for the hero's pursuit of a boon. And I would really love to hear from you about this. I'd love to hear your ideas and your responses. What do you think about that? But to my knowledge, nothing has occurred in the academic world since the publication of Campbell's book to challenge his core thesis. The founding stories of our various religious traditions, both in the East and in the West, in fact, seem to have a great deal in common. They simply do. Even if such a statement leaves a large number of people feeling very uncomfortable. Not that I need to convince anyone else, but I'm going to share with you my own effort briefly here to confront both Campbell's insights and my own deep Jewish identity. So here it goes. What fills my life as a Jew with spiritual richness, with purpose, with a sense of my own personal mission in my lifetime, is not my devotion to some ancient, universally shared myth, but rather it is my commitment to the story as to how a particular people has grappled with and come to understand that myth, and in an incredibly unique fashion. How it crafted that myth into a redemptive story of human existence, and in doing so, gave humankind a perspective on life that has shaped civilizations, that created a people that treasures wisdom, that enshrines the noblest of values, that offers us both hope and purpose, and defines holiness as our way of imitating what we understand the core attributes of God to be. Our boon, the Jewish boon, forever remains Torah. Torah is our gift to ourselves. Torah is our gift to all of humankind, today, throughout history, and into the future. And maybe it's also a gift to Harry Potter. Another question. Torah is our life and the length of our days. That's my view. So let me know your responses. Share those ideas with me. How do you feel about the monomyth? How do you feel about this approach to the story of Moses? Share your responses with me. A lot to think about. Good stuff. And it's going to be a great week. Shabbat Shalom. And God bless our country and humanity along with it. Shabbat Shalom.